Okay, can we start? My name's Kevin McCurry, and it's my task to introduce this third and final session. I want a great pleasure in introducing Francis.
Thank you very much, and it's really delighted to be asked here today, and I want to thank Hannah and the People's Movement for inviting me to chair the session today, and I'm delighted to be here to discuss such an important topic. And I would like to give my commitment today to keep raising the issues of neutrality in Leinster House, and I think it's a great idea to set up some form of a committee, an Oireachtas committee. That's a fantastic idea, and I think myself and Alice Mary will certainly work on that in the next few weeks. I firmly believe in Ireland's neutrality and want to state in the strongest possible terms that I do not want to see Ireland participating in military schemes like PESCO. In the early sessions, many brilliant speakers outlined the dangers of EU militarisation, as well as the cost this can have for Ireland and our reputation for peace building. This session is about looking forward and where we can go from here in the theme of building a national and European peace movement. I'm delighted to be joined by members of the European Parliament, Ming, Flanagan and Lynn Boylan, as well as Lave, Broch, I think that's the right pronunciation, from the Danish People's Movement for this session, who bring a wealth of knowledge on the topic and how we can build alliances for peace across Ireland and Europe. From my own perspective, I really believe this needs urgent public debate. PESCO calls for permanent and structured cooperation in the areas of security and defence with other EU members, many of which are not neutral and have very different interests and histories to Ireland. We are told we can opt in and out, but I can't see how this respects our constitutional provision on neutrality, something I hold very dear. It includes commitment to spend a bigger share of our budget on defence, and I know this has already been said, money that should be paying for hospitals, education and housing. It is being greeted by other EU leaders as a step towards the European Defence Union. The Irish government's decision to join PESCO was rushed through the Oireachtas before Christmas, and myself and Alice Mary and our CEG group in general questioned and opposed it. Railroading bills without real debate is a bad way of doing politics, and it's vital that the public are given a fair chance to discuss this issue. Events like today are where we start. I believe that if we have these debates, the Irish people will be clear that they do not want to participate in military schemes like PESCO. They understand the value of our neutrality and stand against militarisation. They know that Ireland has made an enormous contribution to peace building around the world, most recently in the areas of nuclear non-proliferation, and that our neutrality is vital to this. We have played the role of peacemaker exceptionally well.
So regardless of what spin is put on it, PESCO is a military alliance. I refer to it as a war alliance because I think we have an issue with the branding of it as well. PESCO means nothing to the vast majority of people at home. PESCO, pesto. It's, and it's deliberately done for that reason. You give it this acronym and, it just goes over people's heads. So I think we need to think about the branding of it. I've just kept referring to it as a war alliance in every speech, but if people have a better idea, but I think it's about making the connection for your average Joe that this is about exactly what it is about, which is about militarisation and a war alliance that's for the benefit of Europe's imperialist powers and the arms industry. It does nothing to benefit the average European or improve global or European security. And EU officials have continuously stated that PESCO is to complement NATO and that all the PESCO missions will be consistent with NATO's global strategy. So, it is what it is. It's a military alliance. From its initiation, PESCO has been a Franco-German lead project, and with 6 of the 17 announced PESCO projects being led by France and Germany, and I believe that Ireland is going to join the German-led battle group in 2020. The Logistic Hub's German lead project's official description saying that it will greatly improve the EU and the NATO's capacity to conduct even the most demanding missions. The European campaign against the arms trade and other groups have highlighted that far from making Europe safer, PESCO is just the next step in the militarisation of the EU and is the result of further influence influence from the arms industry, and I heard some of the commentary after the second panel around that and around the influence that the arms industry has. And I think we need, as an organisation, again, while also referring to PESCO differently, but to highlight to people the effect or the impact that the lobbying has on who are actually pulling the strings in Brussels. The Commission has committed 1.5 billion a year for defence spending from 2021, and these funds will primarily go to those large arms companies based in France, Germany, Spain and Italy. PESCO helps ensure the completion of creation of a permanent war economy funded by European public money. And it's interesting, I've done a lot of work on Egypt, on human rights, and when I was out there on one of the trips, I was told about how François Hollande at the time was going out to Egypt, and I was asked would he raise the case of the French citizen who was murdered in a cell in a police station, and the French government said it would be unhelpful to raise that at the current time, and when he was there he announced a huge arms deal. So it's not just in Iraq, it's also when it comes to human rights in all of the different countries. So I know, look, the government is trampling on Irish neutrality, I don't need to tell you that. By committing Irish resources to a military alliance that's designed to replicate NATO's European pillar. But it's also intended to give the military's operational capability to more effectively launch military interventions outside Europe and to increase the integration of European defence forces. And in the recent debate with, I think it was when Leo was speaking in the Parliament, Manfred Weber, the leader of the group the Fine Gael are members of, referred to this, what's the problem if soldiers are wearing a European flag? Wouldn't this be a great thing? So I mean, that's what's happening out there. But I mean, currently the EU's naval mission as well in the Mediterranean, Operation Sophia, is still targeting operations targeting people smugglers off the Libyan coast. But the third phase of this mission will involve European troops in Libya. And this mission will be supported by PESCO projects designed to increase European deployability and allowing the EU's mission in Libya and future interventions to be independent of the UN or official NATO structures. This mission has been heavily criticised by NGOs for causing not only more deaths at sea and forcing refugees back to Libya to be trafficked and sexually abused, but it has seen the EU fund and train the Libyan Coast Guard and return refugees to Libya. PESCO, as we've heard as well, obviously requiring member states to spend 2% of their GDP on military spending. It means that the Irish budget is now going to be overseen by the European Defence Agency. And this has gotten so little debate in the Irish media, and I know the media has its own agenda, but I do think in terms of what we're here to talk about in this third panel, about where do we go from this room, how do we mobilise people, I think the expenditure one is key. And I know we were talking about people saying, conflating, I think it was Peter Pringle was saying about conflating the two, lack of resources, lack of services to the spending. There was a really interesting poster campaign in Australia, and it wasn't about militarisation, but it was around corporate tax, and I think it's something that can provide a template, which was the posters, huge billboards were taken out and saying, this pothole is brought to you courtesy of Starbucks. There would be a hospital here if it wasn't for, if Apple paid their tax. So I think things like that are very smart and make the connection for people going, this 2% of expenditure is a massive increase in the Irish budget. I mean, we currently spend, I think it's about 0.6%. I mean, so you have to make that, put that in real terms for people at home. This is what you're talking about. Do you want to choose to have services, or do you want to choose to fund this military alliance? And the focus of the PESCO projects as well, like they reflect on the border militarisation of all aspects of EU foreign policy, the securitisation of EU foreign policy. Frontex's budget has ballooned from 6.3 to 238.7 million in the last 10 years. And much like the new European Defence Fund, the massive increase in funding for Frontex has benefited arms companies with a well-established border security industrial complex, where arms companies are lobbying has a disproportionate effect on shaping European border security. And I'm a member of the Counter-Terrorism Committee in the European Parliament, which was set up. Again, it's like one of those things that the EU does, it's never a waste of crisis. So we had obviously those horrific attacks that have happened in Europe, used as an excuse to circumvent where all of the issues around tackling, I suppose, terror attacks and civil liberties were always carried out under the Lave committee. And what the right wing have now done is set up this counter-terrorism committee, which mostly meets in camera, which means that none of you can hear what's being said. I am a member of it, and all I have heard is that Muslims are bad, and that's where we need to focus our attention, and it's those who are coming in, even just stuff like, you know, that the terrorists are exploiting the migrant routes, and yet when challenged on that to provide any evidence, they had none. And they said, well, maybe it's 5 out of 150,000. But that's what's being said behind the doors, and it's being used to legitimise this further securitisation of sort of fortress Europe, and also as an excuse to go in then and destabilise regions, which only means more migration. So, I'm just sorry, I've lost my train of thought. I went off my script. But look, we do need to defend our neutrality, what's left of Ireland's neutrality, and it's not possible to do that as part of PESCO. And I think what Lave was saying is spot on. What we need is the type of opt-out that the Danes have secured. We were sold a pig in a poke after the second Lisbon Treaty with all of these guarantees that are, you know, we wouldn't have to participate in any military operations, that we had our triple lock. We know, because when we see what the Danes got, we know we got nothing out of those negotiations. So we do have to politicise this and work together, you know, to mobilise together for the transformation of the EU. I believe there's also a debate which, you know, we've heard from, I think, 2 heads of state now, Leo being the first, and then the Croatian minister, all talking about the idea that we all want to cooperate further. But the future of Europe is being debated. Some people in the room might want to leave the EU, others, I suppose like myself, would like to see it reformed. But the debate on the future of Europe is happening now, and we need to insert ourselves into that. Regardless of whether you want to leave or not, we need to insert our position into that debate on the future of Europe to counter the narrative that's being put out there around this. It's about solidarity, it's about coming to our neighbours' defence. That's all you're hearing, and why would you not want to be part of something like that? But I also think we've a big challenge, and no disrespect to anybody in the room, and I'm including myself here, there's nobody under the age of 25. Right? That's a huge problem for us. Why are the young people not concerned about this issue? And we have to face up to what are we doing wrong, that we're not popularising the issue of militarisation. And you know, maybe that is just even with social media, just we have to put our heads together as to how do we attract young people, because we've seen the polls being carried out. You know, most Irish people don't want to be part of military structures. They're proud of their neutrality, they're proud of the peacekeeping missions, but why are they not in the room? Why are they not mobilising, you know, on the streets? And we're on the anniversary of that huge rally that probably everybody in this room took part in against the Iraq War. We need to get those numbers back out onto the streets. We need to popularise this, and that's what I think, leaving today, that's the biggest challenge for us, is we can't just keep talking to ourselves in the room. We have to spread it out.